Alternate history is nothing new, and there's been hundreds, if not thousands, of different scenarios trying to answer the question, what if? Like, what if Alexander went to war with Rome? Or what if the Austrian painter got blasted during Operation Valkyrie? Or even, what if the Archduke of Austria was never assassinated in Sarajevo? And many more to come from the brilliant minds of the future as the present plummets more near the very events we fear since the dawn of man. One of them, of course, just happens to connect with the last example I gave you just seconds ago. But the opposite. What if something happened during the Treaty of Versailles? Or if it never happened at all? Will the Great War turn into a greater conflict that will become the cataclysm for human extinction, with everlasting hate as its reactants? So much hate that the earth was ravaged by artillery shells, which causes the surface of the world to become uninhabitable, causing the war to continue below. Soldiers continued to be levied and conscripted, indoctrinated to become a powerful horde of cannon fodders. Dead bodies lie down as the caves run red with blood. There are no doubts that these soldiers trapped themselves into a pit of endless savagery and created a new Hades to be dwelled by the living, to live on their own graves they dug, and to be mourned. Alright, that's enough with the Shakespearean BS. I'm not even good at social communication skills to think of any other word besides cabbage. So let's just get to the point of the video. The war is cruel, but the weapons are cool. From relics symbolizing imperialistic campaigns to literal death machines soldiers get executed for, which is ironic if they're just as cruel as the other stuff being used during the war. So without further ado, let's begin. The Prince Rifle is a 7-round or 8 if you have veteran perk bolt-action rifle and is the starting primary weapon for every class in the game. The gun was based from the real-life Lebel Model 1886, a 10-round bolt-action rifle from French origin that used 8mm and is the first ever military rifle that uses smokeless powder. It became the iconic weapon of the French during the First World War, with different variations being invented as the years passed. It was named after Lieutenant Colonel Nicolas Lebel, the army officer who suggested the use of 8mm in the gun. The gun was rarely ever depicted in media, and if it was often used by, well, the French. The gun's name in the game being Prince because the lore said M1886 is boring is based on the lore that the Sleepless War was caused by the assassination of Prince Lado, and ironic enough, he was killed by the same gun itself, hence the namesake and the legacy it will carry. Nevertheless, for a starter weapon, it's actually a good rifle according to the wiki, and if you haven't noticed, the gun in the game also looks a bit off from the real-life counterpart. It's possible that its purpose is to resemble the late medieval era arquebus to fit that theme of the game of having a medievalist megalomaniac occultist empire using it. The Whisper Silence rifle is based on the iconic M1903 Springfield rifle, which became the standard issued weapon of the US military from 1903 to 1936. Hence, it was also known as the US Caliber 30 M1903. It first saw action during the late stages of the Philippine-American War and small campaigns during US intervention in the Mexican Revolution. Later, when it became widespread and popular among the troops, it saw action during World War I and even World War II, coexisting with the new M1 Garand. After its usual service, it turned into a sniper rifle in the following wars, like in Vietnam for example. The gun was invented to replace the Norwegian Krag-Jorgensen rifle that was still in service at the time, taking inspirations from the Spanish-used Mauser 1893, with most of its design coming from the gun itself. In fact, it was so identical that the Mauser company sued the US military for royalties, and fortunately, it was settled. It was chambered in 30-06 Springfield cartridge until 1957 in favor of the 760x51mm NATO and 556x45mm NATO, because NATO. The Whisper variant in the game was based on the experimental Springfield attached with Maxim's suppressor. By Maxim, I meant his son, and the autoloader skill is based on the Patterson device used in World War I, which made the gun semi-automatic but only shoot pistol rounds. This attachment would soon indirectly influence the future M1 Garand. The Jesse rifle was based on the real-life legendary British Lee Enfield rifle, specifically the SMLE variant Mark III. The rifle was used as a standard issue rifle of the British forces all over the world, from Great Britain to India and other colonies to the Empire. It saw action during World War I and World War II, using a different variant called the number 4 Mark I. In fact, it has many variants, but will stick to the specific one that the game has depicted to be used by players. It was named after the British-Canadian inventor of its bolt system, James Paris Lee, and where the rifle was manufactured, the Royal Small Arms Factory in Enfield. The gun was invented and was introduced in 1895 to replace the old Martini Henry and Martini Enfield rifles, because turns out line battles are no longer meta and Europe is now advocating for a faster type of weapon that can shoot more than a single round. The Lee Enfield officially started by its predecessor, the Lee Metford, and it was upgraded to the better version that we know today. Chambered in 303 British, the rifle uses a 10-round magazine, but soldiers still use clip to reload it for budgetary reasons. Nonetheless, most of the time, British soldiers would only load 5 rounds to the gun to save the magazine spring from malfunctioning. The Boinker grenade that was used in its special ability doesn't seem to resemble any real-life rifle grenade used by the gun. Nonetheless, I could be wrong, so feel free to correct me. It remained in service until 1957, when it was replaced by the L1A1 self-loading rifle, the semi-automatic British variant of the FN FAL, but it still reserved its use as a sniper and marksman rifle around the world. The Crossbow lever action rifle was based on the real-life Winchester M1886, which was created as a successor for the betterment of the Winchester M1876 centennial version of the famous M1873, also known as the gun that won the West. And like any other lever action rifle that was created during the time of its creation, it was popular among the inhabitants of the Wild West, especially cowboys. Invented none other by John Moses Browning, the same inventor behind the BAR, with the help of William Mason as hunting weapon, the gun can be chambered in many rounds such as the 4570 Government, 4590 Sharps, 4282 Winchester, and many more, including shotgun shells and other large cartridges, even firing smokeless rounds. This gun wasn't really used in wars in a major scale, though the Royal Air Corps bought a handful of this gun in World War I, along with incendiary ammunition, in order to burn down German Zeppelins. I would say that out of all rifles in the game, this one is probably the rarest you'll see in a battlefield. In terms of history, of course, not in the game, let alone ton of warfare, excluding the crossbow, of course, which will probably have its own video in the future. And that, my fellow viewers, are the current rifles that I have covered in this video. I can't cover all rifles in the game because of my storage. In fact, these 4 rifles are the only ones that I have mastered, or at least get over 100 kills to get the first skin. But if you want the second part, I can also cover the shotguns and pistols. So that's all, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. Although I also want to apologize on how little information that I gave about these rifles, because most of these are just basic informations that came from Wikipedia and gun wikis. Yeah, it's kinda pretty lame, but I also made sure that those claims have citations on it. But hey, if you're a gun expert, you can also correct me in the comments below. That's all, everyone. Thank you for watching. And as a final grim reminder, remember that war is evil, killing is bad, and that peace and prosperity is what normal human beings yearns for.